The New Jersey Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Belvidere Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted with the Star Ledger and Express Times and submitted to the town clerk of the town of Belvidere on April 6, 2022. The meeting will be live streamed at www.belvideresd.org. Flag salute. Roll call.
Mr. Ackerman? Mr. Blum? Mrs. Costantino?
Here.
Dr. Zuppeth?
Here.
Mrs. Duckworth? Mrs. Kennedy?
Yeah.
Mrs. Scott?
Here.
Mrs. Soroka? Mrs. Steffen?
Here.
Mr. Ty?
Here.
Mrs. Weidlich? Mr. Scott?
Okay. We're here tonight to talk about the budget. Want to start?
Yeah, I know we've had some really good notes from the Finance Committee, the last set of notes that went out prior to this evening's meeting. I don't think Mrs. Kennedy has them ready to go right away, but we're really good and really talked about what the essence of where we were with the preliminary budget was. So we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity before we have our meeting on the 4th of May, where we will be looking to approve our budget. If there's any questions or comments or concerns and things we can either take a look at within the budget, if any board members had any major questions or concerns, that we can hopefully address them now, so when we get to May 4th and we're on a much shorter time frame, that we can have everything addressed. So I don't know if we want to start. I don't know if you want to just have a quick review of where we were from finance tonight. Laura, I don't know if you, that's kind of putting you on the
Yeah,
spot.
she's
I
got
don't
the notes
necessarily
there.
mean to do that, but if you want to summarize.
All right. We did discuss, I think the biggest part of that, what we just came out of, was discussing the feasibility study and how we're going to be moving forward with that. Whoever their contact information was, they have ghosted. I guess that is the best term to use for that.
I think the person is currently unemployed because of the change in the administration.
He said he was staying to work with Sweeney and he would be at a different government entity.
He is no longer there responding, and
I
there's
know.
a new person that is not leading us in the way that he did. So now we're kind of on our own again and back to
He
square
didn't give
one.
us any more information on that last night, did he?
He did not.
No. So luckily, Laura thinks she has a contact, possibly.
Oh,
So
good.
So I'll be reaching out to that contact tomorrow and just get a feeler for where the grant is and who the school could reach back out to and remake that contact. Other than that, I think that was like the biggest chat that we've had.
Yeah, there was no recommendations or no changes to the
No.
preliminary budget as we presented it back in March.
So I don't know if anybody that's not in finance wants to discuss anything further on the budget.
Reading those sheets are,
Talk about that? Did you
Yeah,
bring
go
that
ahead
up
if you'd like
during?
to, yeah.
So I just sent an email after our instructional council committee meeting. We had discussed the addition of the pre-K and the needs of some of the students, and to make sure that that is incorporated in the budget, and just looking forward to make sure that we have enough funds for any additional services that might be needed moving forward. Since the numbers were so low prior to COVID, the shift may be drastic, and just I asked that we look into that in the budget and make sure that that was all covered.
I did mention, I think I mentioned in my response, for our curriculum meeting on the 27th, Ms. Spaghelli will be there to talk about, to specifically address the question about the preschool, but then also to go over child study team and where we are and what we're projecting to be. And, again, when I talked to her on Friday specifically after that meeting to follow up with that, she felt comfortable as to where we were. And I said in my email back, currently, but we all recognize, especially with special ed and the way things have gone, certainly over the last 2 years, that could change quickly, but we feel we're prepared for those changes if necessary.
I also think I get a little confused sometimes because the preschool is grant funded, a lot of it, right? So
All of
it's
it, yeah.
All of it. So, I don't know, through the grant, are we able to get those ABA certified people? Is that coming from our budget? Are they going to be able to help us with that, or will it
Yes,
have to?
it's an interesting conversation. I think Mr. Karabinas was going down the road of when we now this is when we initially signed up for the grant, so we're going back 3 years ago. We were not allowed to have a preschool disabilities class. They had to be
Inclusive.
It had to be inclusive. And at last check, that was still the case. So I understood what the teachers' concerns were, but I think any of those services that are going to could take place would have to take place outside of the classroom, or we could start
Which
our
would
own
then
preschool
fall
disability.
under our special education budget.
Correct.
I would like to address the budget, please. I am philosophically opposed to balancing the budget by going into surplus. If we're going to sustain $300,000 to $350,000 of decreased revenues, then philosophically, I think it's better to cut expenses by that same amount.
Have we
It's
made,
kind of like kicking the can down the road. Eventually, the piper's going to have to be paid.
I know, we just in finance were having the same kind of conversation, and that, again, brought us back to the whole feasibility study, that we're fortunately and unfortunately in a situation where a lot of schools are in even worse shape than us when it comes to budgetary concerns right now and less state funding, and will be in even worse shape when the SR2 money goes away. So, again, even more reason to look at the feasibility. I don't know where else we can cut right now, but I do understand it's going to be an issue down the road, which is why we so badly want to move forward with the feasibility study and look at things like regionalization or wherever we can kind of come together. But cutting now, I don't know where we can find it.
Well, it's not up to us as a board to find it, it's up to the administration. It's up to us to say, we would like a budget $350,000 less because we received less revenues.
Can I express my opinion on that?
Mhm.
I also want to make sure that we have a budget that supports quality education and enough programs for the children that come to the school. So it's not as, let's just cut $300,000. How do we cut and maintain programs, and how do we, if the decrease of a student is what's causing the decline, how do we look long-term and change that? Because at the end of the day, the quality that we're offering is important.
have we made any cuts in this budget?
We have one staff member cut right now.
Not just staff member. In general, have we made any cuts in this budget? Books, programs,
I'll let Shelley answer that.
anything?
I would say yes, but I don't want to be specific.
In the preliminary budget, I think I handed out at the last meeting, it was page 30, kind of went over the cuts that we made in order to balance the budget. And that included reducing a position, reducing a high school staff member, reducing the number of resource room positions by one, and we did cover some with reserves, and we also made some reductions in athletics, and then did the 2% tax increase to balance.
That was a position, not a person, and then a staff member,
So,
and then a resource room person?
I mean, there's 3 cuts to staff, or to positions. So three reductions in positions. I mean, I don't know how should I explain
Yeah,
it
basically
differently?
2 people we're not replacing that we know are leaving.
Okay, so one position and an additional 2 people.
Correct.
And what about in instructional council, they were talking about the virtual school that nobody seemed to be thrilled with?
Yeah, so I think in that discussion, the company that we are currently using, we are not going to be using next year. We are looking at a different company just to have similar offerings for the middle school kids.
So it'll be no savings probably.
Be no saving. I can't imagine. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not significant.
Anything else?
I think the problem's gonna be the regionalization is 3, 4, 5 years down the line.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a possible long-term solution, but we need a short-term solution for the interim years.
I think we need to push and move fast on that. I agree that it's longer, and I understand that we're looking at shorter, but we shouldn't think 5 years term. I think we need to really press and get that faster. Because, again, it's not just regionalization, but it's also efficiencies. There are other ways that we could be functioning better and saving, so.
The application is due June 30th, and they're saying, 18-month, that's what they're estimating turnaround. So I agree with you. Next
Yeah.
year is not going to be fixed.
Even the
But-
following year, because if we get it in 18 months, now all the boards have to look at it. We'll have to have discussions about it. So a minimum, I'd say, in my opinion, 3 years.
Yeah,
We
keep in
gotta
mind,
go
too-
that way. That's not what
Yeah,
I'm
keep in
saying.
mind, too, when it comes to regionalization, it's a public vote.
Yes.
While the board may support it, that doesn't mean that it'll go through. The board, the townsfolk get to vote on that,
Correct.
all 4 townships. And if one does not agree to it, then it's back to the drawing board.
Right. So I'm not saying we shouldn't push it. I think we should push it hard, but I think we need to have a plan B for the interim and for possible later on. I don't have a suggestion for that plan B. I just think we need one.
I don't think anybody disagrees
No.
with that.
If I had a solution, trust me, I'd give it to you. Although I do think we need to look at what we do well, and we need to consolidate what we do well. Instead of having 18 irons in the fire, maybe we need to pull it back to 12 irons in the fire kind of thing. Put more money with the 12, and you can cut some out of the overage and save some there possibly.
Anything else?
We were cut.
What was that?
When was the news
When?
handed down that we lost 300,000? I mean, I think my point is,
I believe it was
just
March
going
10th.
to say is,
March
Yeah,
10th
just
might
in
have been the
March.
exact date.
it's a real short amount of time to
Yeah.
find $300,000 from a budget where you can cut it.
Yeah.
Now that we know, going forward, yes.
Right, the
we
governor's
need to figure
address
something
ended up
out.
being March 8th, and then aid was released on March 10th.
Yeah, I just,
I
Well, then
think-
let's
I
plan
think-
on restoring that surplus.
got to be a goal or a plan or something moving forward, but you
Okay?
can't,
My idea.
can't criticize and knock down something where you're given cut $300,000 and have to make a decision very quickly.
In 1 month?
It's not fair.
And I think the point is well taken, and that was part of the finance discussion. I think now, moving forward, for next year, we have to have that in the back of our mind. That's a
That's
real
going to
strong
happen.
possibility, where, like I had said, it wasn't a possibility. Like, normally, we gained a few $1,000s, and we were just happy that it was a break even, and so to have that, and, with all due respect to Hope and White, who you guys have been dealing with this for a few years, for us, it was a shock. It was not anticipated in it at all. Now, next year, moving forward, when we start the budgeting process early, something we have to keep in the back of our mind.
Yeah, and part of the conversation has been, the base of the problem is the fact that we're losing children, so how do we attract kids to come to our district instead of going elsewhere? So we really got to be very conscious on what we're offering and what we're cutting to make sure that we don't end up losing even more.
I agree with that, but I I don't like it when we say we're losing children. K to 8 or pre-K to 8, kids aren't going anywhere else. They're here. If they're in town, they're here. If we've lost them, it's because we have less children in the town. The high school, we do have kids that go to Warren Tech, but other than that, it's again the same thing. We just don't have the kids in the 4 towns. That's not going to go away. Now, I could sell my house because I don't have any kids, but one family of 3 kids moving it isn't going to help the district. We need tons of older people with no kids to leave, and that's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So we're not going to get more kids. So given the fact that we're not going to get more kids, we need a different plan.
Right, but in a school district as small as ours, and you're right, we're never going to have
No.
a huge influx. We should not be losing that many kids to tech, and I just feel like every year it's a few more. And we were just talking, Chris is actually having a meeting with some kids, find out why, why they're planning on going there. What's the draw? What don't we have here? It has to be a priority.
I don't disagree with that. I've been saying that for 10 years. And, again,
Isn't this historically the way it goes, though? Like, the enrollment goes up and down, like, this is not something very new?
no,
No.
and it's been
I
going
don't
down for 10 years.
understand why it's such a big deal that we have a small amount of
It's been going,
enrollment. It goes up and down, like.
no, it
it's-
doesn't. And for the last
Yes, it
10 years,
does.
Yes,
it's traditionally
it
gone
does.
down.
Yes, it does.
I asked for these numbers actually recently. I asked Mr. Kruba and Shelley if they can get us numbers, because what happens is we had 130 and 140 kids just graduate in the past couple years. We didn't have those numbers graduating from our elementary schools in 8th grade. So you can't replace 140 kids that just graduated as seniors with kids that were only graduating maybe 100 kids between all the sending districts. It doesn't happen. So I did ask for those numbers, and they have to go through getting it from the other schools to be able to get those numbers. But I went here years ago, and you always had kids going to tech. Kids that are going to tech, some of them are going out because then they're going to start a welding thing the year they get out as a senior. We can't put that kind of thing in here, and we shouldn't try. So we need to see the numbers too, as to how many kids, what percentages is actually going there. Is it actually going up a ton or not? If you're only graduating 90 kids, you're not going to have 120 kids available to come to Belvidere as freshmen. That's just the way it is.
Right.
So you can't just think you're going to replace class to class and always stay at 500 students.
I
It's
think you
always
guys are
ebbed and flowed.
agreeing, right? Marianne's saying that there's
Right.
just not as many kids
Yeah.
in the 4 districts.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you're saying we've always lost kids,
And we always
and we
have-
still
right,
are losing, a couple of kids here and there, but we just have less kids to go around.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I tend to agree.
I went on the
On
department.
the, on page 12 of the preliminary budget that I handed out, I have it's your, just for high school, but it just shows that, our enrollment's just going down, but I think our demographics have just been going down.
Right.
Back in 2000, we have had 523 kids. It grew to 586 in 2009, and ever since, we're, slowly going down to where we're at 355.
I went on the Department of Ed website, and you can go back, I could go back 9 years, not 10, and get the counts of the kids in the grammar schools and in the high school, and it's just steadily gone down. We're down like maybe 120 kids total from 9 years
Yeah,
ago.
sure.
And I don't have it with me tonight. I had it with me a couple of weeks ago, but I should still have it in an Excel file. I can mail the graph to everybody just so you can see. But it has been a steady decline. There's just, all the towns are losing
But I also think
children.
that, to wrap in what Doris Alba is saying, is that because our numbers overall are down, it's more and more important to maintain and to gather in those extra, 10, 12, 15, whatever it is.
Yeah, we can't afford to lose
We
those
can't
10 now.
afford to have our normal, trickling out. We need to do our best to try to trickle everybody back in because
Yeah,
the numbers
That's
overall
my
are lower.
point.
But then in the same respect, how much is it going to keep to get those kids, how much is it going to cost to get those kids here if you're going to try and add programs? Is it a lose-lose?
No,
If you're trying to attract 10 kids that are going for 2 certain programs, it's going to cost a lot of money to, A, hire teachers to do that and get certified, and B, put some of the stuff in to even be able to run a program and to get to the point where you can offer a graduating senior to go on the job market and just be ready to be certified and on that.
Right.
It's
It all
a
depends
whole
on what those
different
programs are.
ball
If
game.
it's welding, we're not going to be able to do that, But if it's something else that we didn't even think of and somebody happens to have some kind of certification, we can do whatever we can to try to make it work for the kids.
And that's why I think it's important to talk to the kids that are leaving so we can figure out why. And if it's 10 kids that are going because 5 want to be welders and 5 want to be mechanics, or you're right, we're not
Yeah.
gonna bring those kids back, but if it's 3 that are going for atmosphere or whatever, then that's something we can work on.
So, Mr. Karuba, could your administration do a survey and present it to the board?
A survey on,
What the kids are interested in and why they're going to VOTEC? And
Yeah.
what can we do to entice them to remain here?
we can do that. In fact, it's timely because they just got their acceptances at the end of last week, so now we know specifically who to talk to. So that's why I had mentioned in finance, I'll be meeting with the students from Harmony, hopefully Thursday this week, if not right when we get back from break, to just have that conversation, just to know what's drawing them away.
How many from Belvidere are going? Do you know?
I think Chris said it's only about 5 accepted. We don't know
Right.
who's
They may,
definitely
they may
going yet.
choose not to go.
They may choose,
Right.
and same thing with Harmony. There's 10 that are accepted. But
How about White and
I don't know. I have not
Hope?
spoken.
Any idea? No?
We can find that out. I'll find that out.
To that point, I know that's like a really quick fix, and I've brought this up in the past, probably a year or so ago when I was on that end of things. I think it's really important to start getting the community more involved. I know we don't have a lot of people here, maybe they're online watching right now, but why are we not asking the parents in an independent survey without fear of retribution how the school is doing? Lay it out there. I think it's time. I think you're beyond time, and we have to get it done.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't know why you keep saying fear of retribution. I don't know why that's always a comment. There's no retribution to be had. Tell us what you think.
Okay, well,
I agree that there is none, but parents feel there could be, so they're afraid to answer questions.
I will tell you right now personally, I feel it within town, not only by being here, but by being on other organizations. People tend to attack what they don't know or what is new and change. The only one that generally likes change is hopefully a baby. And so when change is starting to happen, people get really scared. And so it's that animosity that's there. And, right away, everyone just puts their hands up and goes, well, I'm not going to deal with this person because they have views on X, Y, and Z. So it is really important. You don't have parents coming here because they're very fearful of, well, if they speak up, what's going to happen to my kids? What's going to happen with my business? That's the harsh reality of this town. It's a small town. I love this town. That's why I'm here. That's why I own a business here. That's why I have a family here. That's why I'm doing so much work for the town right now. That's me personally.
Oh,
But
I
at
agree.
this point, I think everyone should get more skin in the game. Ask.
I think there are ways, you can make Google surveys anonymous. They tell me
Absolutely.
that all
We
the
did
time
it-
at school.
We did a
right?
survey maybe like 3 or 4
I
years
was
ago.
gonna
We
say,
did
there was a
honestly.
survey a
Yeah.
couple years ago, and
Yeah.
part of it was people weren't
Right,
doing
they
it.
just weren't doing
It
it.
was
Literally
for
had people at
kids and it
graduation
was for
handing out
parents.
iPads to try to get people to do
Right.
it. So,
But yeah, I
and it
agree
was
with you.
anonymous. It
I
didn't
think,
say.
I think we try it again. I think we find out what the main concerns are, make sure that those concerns are kind of what we've been talking about. If it's the things that we've been working on and in line with, great. And if it's not, then we need to look at that. And I think, you do a great job with the all calls. All call once a month about the survey, coming, or once a week, So we get more and more people to do it. People can't complain if they're not gonna,
I agree.
partake, but they can complain that we didn't do it and we didn't ask, so.
Fair enough.
And I know that you had just said, there's certain things condensing down. What do we do well? I would love for everyone to come up with that list. What is it that this school does really well? Where do we feel that the school is lacking? We're only one part of this entire community. And although we can sit here all that we want and say, well, this is this, this is this, we need to have the community have more buy-in at this point for their own kids' education. It's their tax dollars.
Another perspective to that, and I totally agree, is families and parents of like new families, new parents, when they're looking to buy or move, one of the things that they look at is the school district, how they're functioning, what are the scores, and they make their decisions based on that. So maybe, keeping that in mind and thinking about, okay, how are we promoting ourselves for new people to come in and new parents not to leave, I think could make a difference as well.
I mean, what we're talking about now is what keeps happening in finance. You know, we always assume finance discussions are going to be all numbers.
Yeah.
It's all numbers, but in the end, we keep coming back to these
Absolutely.
big issues, and that's what it's all about. You know, it's these big overarching issues more than the individual dollars. So we got to figure those things out. Anything else? No other comments on the budget? We're looking to approve it when?
May 4th.
At the next meeting, May 4th.
So Shelley and I will do the annual budget presentation, and I'll have that hopefully sent out to everybody in the packet the weekend before, so you can just get a preview of it. And if there's any questions, please let us know ahead of time, especially since we will try our best to answer those. Go ahead, Doug. 2 from Hope going to Warren Tech. We just need to find out why. 2 going or 2 accepted?
Any public participation? It's not on the agenda, but we have people here. Anybody? Okay. Thought we'd ask. All right, anything else before we adjourn? Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
All right, meeting adjourned.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.